My wife told me she had never loved me on a Sunday night, at our own kitchen table, in the calm voice you'd use to cancel a subscription. 15 years. Two kids asleep upstairs. She looked at me across the table where we'd eaten 10,000 dinners and said the marriage had been a mistake from the start, that she'd settled, that she'd never felt for me what a wife is supposed to feel. She said it without crying. That was the part that broke something in me. No tears, just facts, delivered clean, like she'd rehearsed them in the car. I didn't fight. I didn't have anything to fight with. What do you say to that? I just nodded and said okay, and went and sat in the garage in the dark for 2 hours, trying to understand how 15 years could be a thing one of us had faked the whole way through. 3 days later, at 11:40 on a Wednesday night, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't know. It was meant for her, and it told me everything the speech had been built to hide. Let me back up, because you need to understand what 15 years looked like from the inside, from where I was standing, before I tell you what that text said. My name is Mark. I'm 44. I install and service commercial HVAC systems, the big rooftop units on office buildings and grocery stores, the ones nobody thinks about until the building gets hot, and suddenly everybody thinks about them. It's good, steady work. Early mornings, physical, honest. I've done it for 20 years. It's not a job that impresses anyone at a party, but it kept a roof over my family, and it never once bounced a check, and I used to think that counted for something. I still think it counts for something. I've just had to learn that it doesn't count for everything, and that some people are keeping a different ledger than the one you think you're both writing in. Laura and I met when I was 28. She was working the front desk at a physical therapy clinic where I'd gone after wrecking my shoulder on a job. She was sharp and a little guarded, and she laughed at my jokes in a way that felt like winning something. We dated for 2 years and got married in a Knights of Columbus hall with a taco bar and a DJ who played Too Much Journey. And it was, I would have sworn to you, one of the happiest days of both our lives. I have the photos. She's laughing in every one. We had been a couple years in. Then Chloe. We bought a 3-bedroom ranch with a mortgage that scared me and a backyard that sold us on it. I coached Ben's baseball. Laura did the school stuff, the class parties, the endless logistics of two kids' lives. We were tired the way all parents are tired. We had the fights all couples have. Money, whose turn it was, why I left my work boots by the door. But underneath it, I believed, was the thing, the foundation, the we're in this together. Was I a perfect husband? No. I worked long hours. I was tired a lot. There were stretches, especially the last few years, where we felt more like a logistics company than a marriage. Two people running the same operation, texting about pickup times, falling asleep mid-sentence. I noticed the distance. I did. I told myself it was a season. Kids, work, the long middle of a life. I figured we'd come out the other side when things eased up, the way you figure the weather will change if you just wait. I want to be honest about that, because I've had a lot of time to think about my part. I got comfortable. I stopped pursuing her. I assumed she'd always be there because she'd always been there. That's on me, and I've owned it. But there is a difference, and I've had to learn this difference the hard way, between a marriage that's grown distant and a marriage where one person has quietly decided to leave and started building the exit while you're still asleep in the bed. I thought I was in the first kind. I was in the second kind. And the night she told me she'd never loved me, I still didn't understand which one I was in. That's the thing I want you to sit with, if you're anywhere near a situation like this. Distance and betrayal can look identical from the couch. Both of them feel like a spouse who's pulled away, who's on their phone, who's somewhere else even when they're in the room. The tired husband tells himself it's the first kind, because the first kind is survivable, because the first kind is just a season you wait out. I told myself that for 2 years, and I was wrong. And the cost of being wrong was that while I was patiently waiting for the season to change, someone else was drawing up the paperwork. That understanding came Wednesday, at 11:40, from a stranger's phone. I need to walk you through those 3 days first, Sunday night to Wednesday night, because they were some of the worst of my life. and because everything I felt during them turned out to be based on a lie. And I think there's something important in that. After Laura's speech, I went into free fall. Not dramatic. Quiet. The worst kind. I went to work Monday and Tuesday and did my job on autopilot, up on rooftops in the cold, and every spare second my brain played her voice on a loop. I'd never loved you. I settled. It was a mistake from the start. And here's what that does to a man. It doesn't just end the future. It reaches back and deletes the past. Because if she never loved me, then our wedding was a performance. Ben's birth, the way she'd grab my hand, a performance. 15 years of I love yous, the ordinary ones muttered on the way out the door. All of it, if I believed her, was theater performed for an audience of one idiot who thought it was real. I started doing the thing you do. I went back through everything, looking for the moment it had all been fake. I couldn't find it, which only made it worse, because it meant she was better at hiding it than I'd ever imagined. Or it meant she was lying now. And I couldn't tell which, and not being able to tell was its own kind of madness. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brother, not my buddies, nobody. There's a specific shame a man carries when his wife says she never loved him. It's not just heartbreak, it's humiliation, the sense that you were a fool in a way everyone else could probably see. Men especially don't have anywhere to put that. We're not built to call a friend and say, my wife told me I was never loved, and I believe her, and I don't know how to breathe. So I carried it alone, which is what most of us do, which is exactly why it does so much damage. I slept on the couch. I told the kids I had a bad back. I moved around the house like a polite stranger, coordinating pickups with a woman who'd just informed me our entire life was a compromise she'd regretted, not making eye contact, keeping it together for Ben and Chloe. She'd made her declaration, and now she was just waiting for me to accept it, waiting for me to start the process of leaving. That's the detail I didn't clock at the time, but that haunts me now. She wasn't angry. She wasn't grieving. She was patient. She had the calm of a person who has already made every decision and is just waiting for the other party to catch up. I read it as coldness, as proof she'd meant every word. I know now it was something else. It was the calm of someone running a plan. Tuesday night I sat in the garage again. The garage had become my church, apparently, and I made a decision that I would give her the divorce. Not because I wanted it. Because a man cannot stay married to a woman who says she never loved him. I decided I'd leave the house, let her keep it for the kids' stability, be reasonable, be dignified, not fight, take the hit and go rebuild somewhere and see my kids on weekends. I had, in my grief, decided to make it easy for her, which, I would learn 2 days later, was exactly, precisely, to the letter, what the plan required me to do. Leave quietly. Ask for nothing. Let her keep the house for the kids. Take my grief and my dignity and go. I thought I was being a good man. I was being a puppet, and I didn't even know there was a hand in the glove. Then came Wednesday night. I was on the couch. It was 11:40. Laura had gone to bed hours earlier. My phone lit up on the coffee table with a text from a number with no name attached. I almost didn't look, but you always look. So I picked it up, and I read it, and the floor of my life dropped out for the second time in a week. The text said, "Did he take the news okay? Don't feel guilty about the never loved you thing. It's the cleanest way. If he thinks it was never real, he won't fight for it. He'll just leave. Trust me, guilt makes them dig in. This way he's gone by spring, and we're good. Proud of you for finally doing it. Love you." I read it maybe 10 times. I want to try to describe what happens in your body when you read something like that. It's not sadness, not at first. It's a kind of full system reboot. Everything I'd felt for 3 days, the free fall, the humiliation, the deleted past, all of it suddenly had a different meaning, and my brain couldn't switch tracks fast enough. Like a photograph you've stared at for years, and you suddenly realize you've been holding it upside down. Because this text meant that the never loved you was not a confession. It was a tactic. It was a line, coached by someone else, chosen specifically because it would make me give up without a fight. She didn't tell me she never loved me because it was true. She told me because it was effective. Someone had sat with her, this number, this love you at the end, and strategized about which words would break me most efficiently, which sentence would make me fold my hand and walk away without checking my cards. And they'd landed on the cruelest one available, not in spite of its cruelty, but because of it. The cruelty was the mechanism. The cruelest thing she'd ever said to me hadn't even been true. It had been engineering. And there was a we. He'd said we're good. He'd said love you. There was a man. There had been a man the whole time, standing just off stage, and he had just, at 11:40 on a Wednesday, texted the wrong person. I sat there in the dark with the phone in my hand, and I did something I'm not proud of and completely proud of at the same time. I did not wake her up. I did not storm into that bedroom. Instead, something cold and clear came over me. The same focus I get when a complicated system is failing and I have to diagnose it before I can fix it. I thought, don't react. Not yet. He thinks I'm her. That means, for a few minutes, I have a door open that will never be open again. I looked at the message. I looked at the three dots. He was still there, still typing, waiting for a reply from the woman he thought he was texting. And I made a decision that shaped everything that came after. I was not going to let this man know he'd made a mistake. Not yet. Because the version of me that was going to get out of this with his dignity and his kids and his fair share was not the version who threw his phone across the room. It was the version who got quiet and got smart and started, for the first time in 15 years, to actually pay attention. I did not text back. I want to be clear about that, because it was the hardest thing. My thumbs were literally over the keyboard, and there were 100 things I wanted to type, from the devastating to the profane. But I understood, in that cold, clear place, that anything I sent would end the one advantage I'd just been handed. So I let his three dots eventually stop. I let the conversation die on his end, where he'd assumed Laura had just fallen asleep. And I sat with the most valuable thing I'd been given in 15 years, proof, in writing, of exactly what was being done to me, held by the one person who wasn't supposed to have it. I put the phone down face up, exactly where it had been, and I started to think. I didn't sleep at all that night, but it wasn't the same not sleeping as the nights before. Those had been grief. This was something more useful. I lay on the couch and I ran the whole thing back through this new lens, and piece after piece clicked into place, and I understood that I had not been living in the marriage I thought I'd been living in for a long time. The late work things. The phone that had migrated, over the last year or two, from face up on the counter to always with her. The new gym habit, the new clothes, the way she'd gotten a little happier and a little further away at the same time, which I'd read, God help me, as her finding herself, and had been glad about, because I loved her and wanted her happy. The girls' weekends that had gotten more frequent. The way money had felt tighter than it should have, given we both worked. Every one of these I had filed under an innocent heading, because I trusted her, because trusting her was the whole architecture of my life. And you don't go pulling out the load-bearing wall to check if it's real. I thought about the man, too. The we. I didn't know his name yet, but I knew things about him from 4 lines of text. I knew he was comfortable enough with her to sign off, love you. I knew he thought of my divorce as their project. We're good, the whole plan. I knew he was arrogant enough, or careless enough, to fire off a message that important without checking the number twice. And I knew, with a certainty that surprised me, that whoever he was standing in the middle of my family with his shoes on, and had been for a while. By morning I had decided 3 things. 1. I was not going to tell her I knew. Not yet. The moment she knew that text had come to me, the door would slam, the two of them would coordinate, the story would get managed, and I'd be back to being the grieving idiot with no proof of anything. As long as she thought I was just the heartbroken husband quietly preparing to leave, I had time. And time, I was starting to understand, was the only advantage I had. 2. I was going to find out exactly what the plan was. Because that text made it clear there was a plan, a timeline, gone by spring, a strategy, the cleanest way, and a goal, we're good. People don't talk like that about a divorce unless there's money and logistics involved. She wasn't just leaving me for another man. She was executing something, and I needed to understand the whole shape of it before I made a single move. 3. I was going to get a lawyer. Quietly, before she knew anything had changed. I got up Thursday morning and made the kids breakfast and packed Ben's lunch and drove to a job site and serviced 2 rooftop units in the cold, and I was, on the outside, exactly the same defeated man I'd been for 3 days. Inside, I was somebody else entirely. Somebody had texted the wrong number, and in doing so had accidentally handed me back the one thing Laura's speech had been engineered to take: the will to not just lie down. That afternoon, on my lunch break, sitting in my truck in a grocery store parking lot, I took a screenshot of the text. Then I emailed it to myself. Then I backed it up to a drive she didn't know existed. The engineer in me does not trust a single copy of anything. Then I Googled divorce lawyer free consultation, and I made a call. My hands were steady when I dialed. 3 days earlier, I'd been a man in free fall. Now I had a task, and a task is a rope you can climb. Grief with a job attached to it is survivable in a way that grief alone is not. If you're ever in this, find the job. It'll keep your head above the water long enough for the water to go down. The lawyer's name was Denise, and she had the specific, unshockable calm of someone who's watched 1,000 marriages end and knows exactly how they come apart. I sat in her office that Friday on my day off, in my one-collared shirt, and I laid it all out. The 15 years, the Sunday speech, the Wednesday text. I showed her the screenshot. She read it twice. Then she set down her reading glasses and said something I've never forgotten. She said, "Mark, I want you to hear me. What she said to you was cruel. But this text is a gift. Most men in your position spend a year and $10,000 trying to prove what you already have sitting in your phone." Then she explained what I was actually looking at, legally, and it reframed everything. Because here's the thing I hadn't understood. "They never loved you" wasn't just emotional cruelty. It was, Denise explained, very likely strategic in a way that had real financial teeth. In our state, the way a divorce shakes out, who keeps the house, how assets get split, spousal support, all of it, can be heavily influenced by who leaves, who initiates, what agreements get made early and informally before anyone lawyers up. If Laura could get me to accept the story that the marriage had never been real, to feel like I had no claim to it emotionally, then I'd do exactly what I'd already decided to do. Leave the house, ask for nothing, sign whatever got put in front of me, and disappear into a dignified fog of grief. "They never loved you" was designed to make me forfeit. It was a move to get me to give up the house and my fair share before I even understood there was a fight. And though we're good by spring, Denise's eyebrows went up at that one, because it suggested there was money in motion. A timeline that's specific usually means someone's been planning the finances. She asked me questions I didn't have answers to. Was there money I couldn't account for? Had Laura opened any new accounts? Had she been unusually interested in our finances lately? Or unusually uninterested? Had there been any big purchases, any transfers, anything that didn't add up? I realized, sitting in that chair, that I had no idea. I had handed the finances to Laura years ago. She was better at it, more organized, and I trusted her. And it was one less thing on my plate. I didn't even know all our account numbers. I'd been so proud of that, once. Look at us, a real partnership, division of labor. Now I understood that division of labor had quietly become one person controls all the information, and that I'd walked into that arrangement smiling, handing over the map to my own life because carrying it felt like a chore. Let me say this plainly to every person listening who's done the same thing, and it's most of us. Know your own finances. Not because you don't trust your spouse, because a person who has no idea what they own is a person who can be erased on paper, and you should never let yourself be that person, no matter how much you love the one holding the pen. Denise looked at me with something close to pity and said, "Okay, before you do anything else, We need to find out what you actually own and what's actually left. She gave me a homework assignment. Quietly, over the next 2 weeks, without tipping Laura off, I was to document everything. Every account, every statement, every asset. I was to become, in my own home, an investigator of my own life. I drove home that night with a folder of instructions on the passenger seat and a completely different future than the one I'd had that morning. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. I lived a double life inside my own house. On the surface, I was the wounded husband, slowly, sadly accepting the end. I let Laura believe it. I even, God forgive me, played it up a little, got quiet at dinner, agreed when she gently floated the idea that maybe I should start looking for a place. I watched her relief when I said that. I watched her think it was working. That was a hard thing to watch, but I let her have it, because every day she thought the plan was on track was a day I had to work. Underneath, I was documenting everything. I'll tell you how, because some of you may need to know someday, and I hope you never do. I got up before her, while the house was dark, and I went through the home office. I found the folder where she kept the financial paperwork. She'd always handled it, so it was all in one place, which turned out to be a mistake on her part. I photographed statements, bank, retirement, the mortgage, the credit cards. I didn't take anything. I just documented, put it back exactly, and left no trace. And I found things. I found a savings account I had never heard of, in her name only, that had been quietly built up over about 2 years to a number that made my stomach drop. Money that had been siphoned, a little at a time, from our joint account into her private one. Those tight money years hadn't been tight because of the kids. They'd been tight because our household income had been getting quietly diverted into an escape fund. I found she'd been making extra payments to move money around in ways I didn't fully understand, but that Denise later confirmed were textbook, building separate resources, positioning assets, getting ready. And I found him. Not by snooping her phone. I never cracked her phone. I didn't need to. I found him through the money. There were charges. Restaurants I'd never been to on nights she'd said she was with girlfriends. A hotel, twice, in our own city, which is its own special gut punch. Not even the excuse of travel, just a hotel 20 minutes away. And a recurring name on a couple of transactions that, when I searched it, turned out to be a man named Derek who worked at the physical therapy clinic. The same clinic where I'd met her 15 years earlier. He'd been a colleague of hers, back at the front desk days, and had resurfaced in her life about 2 years ago. 2 years. The exact age of the secret savings account. I sat with all of it spread across my truck's dashboard one morning before work. Photos of statements, the search results, the timeline, and I felt the grief try to come back. Because it was real now, fully real, not a cruel sentence at a table, but a documented, dated, 2-year architecture of leaving. My wife had been building an exit for 2 years while I coached Little League and fixed rooftop units, and told myself we were just in a season. But the grief didn't take me under this time, because I wasn't helpless anymore. I had a folder too now, and I had a lawyer. And in 3 days, I had a meeting with Denise to decide what to do with all of it. The plan had a name I didn't know yet. His name was Derek. And Derek had no idea that the man he'd accidentally texted had spent 2 weeks turning that mistake into the best documented divorce case his lawyer had seen in years. I want to talk about the kids for a minute, because they were the whole reason I did any of this the way I did it. And because if you're a parent going through something like this, they're the part that will keep you up at night worse than the betrayal. Ben was 13, Chloe was 10, and they knew something was wrong. Kids always know. They're not stupid. They read the temperature of a house better than any thermometer. Ben had gotten quiet and clingy in a way 13-year-olds don't like to admit to. Chloe had started coming into the living room at night with excuses, a bad dream, a glass of water, that were really just her checking that the ground was still there. Everything cold and strategic I was doing for them. Here's what I mean. My first instinct, when I read that text after the shock, was fury, the kind that wants to burn the house down. expose everything, scream the truth to anyone who'd listen, blow it all up. And I could have. But I kept thinking about Ben and Chloe, and I kept arriving at the same place. Whatever happened between me and Laura, these two kids had to come out the other side with two parents they could still love, in a life that still had a floor under it. I could not be the man who detonated their mother in front of them, even if she'd earned it, especially because they hadn't. So I made myself a rule, those 2 weeks, and I held to it through everything that came after. I would fight for what was fair, for the house, for my share, for my kids' stability, with everything I had. But I would do it in lawyers' offices and in documents, in the cold, quiet legal machinery where it belonged. I would not do it in front of my children. I would never, not once, make them choose. I would never tell them what their mother had said to me at that table, or what Derek's text had said. That was mine to carry, not theirs. It was the hardest promise I've ever kept, because there were so many moments I wanted to defend myself, wanted them to know I hadn't just failed, hadn't just gotten dumped, that there was a whole hidden story. When Ben got quiet and distant with me, because kids, not knowing the truth, often aim their confusion at the parent who's actually there, I wanted so badly to say, "It's not what you think. Buddy, let me show you what your mother did." I never did. When Chloe asked me point blank one night, "Daddy, did you do something to make mommy sad?" It took everything I had not to hand a 10-year-old the truth just to clear my own name. I said, "No, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups just can't fix things, and it's nobody's fault, and it's for sure not yours. That's ego, wanting your kids to take your side. That's a grown man wanting to be exonerated by his own children. And kids should never have to be anyone's jury." So I swallowed it. Every single time. I think it's the thing I'm most proud of in the whole story. Not the investigation, not the lawyer, not the way it eventually turned out. The fact that my kids, to this day, do not carry the ugliest parts of what happened between their parents. I carried those. That was my job. It's still my job. The night before my second meeting with Denise, Chloe came out with the water glass excuse, and I sat with her on the couch until she fell asleep against my arm, and I looked at her face and I understood exactly what I was fighting for, and it wasn't revenge. It never was. It was the two of them, and the floor under their feet. Then I went to see my lawyer, and we made a plan of our own. Denise laid out the options across her conference table like a hand of cards. Option 1. I could confront Laura with everything. The text, the account, Derek, the hotel, in a screaming, cathartic explosion. Emotionally satisfying. Legally and practically, a mistake. It would tip my whole hand. Let her start managing the narrative. Maybe let her move money before I could freeze anything. Option 2. I could say nothing at all. Let her keep believing the plan was working, and let Denise quietly file first, with all my documentation in order, and hit her with the reality in the form of legal paperwork, freezing accounts, claiming the house, the whole thing, done by the book, no ambush of emotion, just the cold fact of a husband who turned out to be paying attention after all. I'll be honest about how much I wanted option 1. There is a version of me that lives in an alternate life where I woke her up that Wednesday night, threw the phone on the bed, and watched her scramble. That version got to feel, for about 90 seconds, like the hero of his own story. And then that version tipped his hand, gave her 2 weeks to move money and lawyer up and rewrite the narrative, and probably lost the house. The 90 seconds of satisfaction would have cost me years. I've noticed that's almost always the trade Betrayal offers you. A short, hot hit of righteousness in exchange for your long-term well-being. Denise's whole job, it turned out, was to keep talking me out of the 90 seconds. We went with a version of option 2. But before we pulled the trigger, Denise said something that has stayed with me, and I want to pass it to you, because I think it's the most important thing in this whole story. If you've made it this far with me, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel and join us every day. Because I know some of you are listening to this from inside your own version of those 2 weeks. Maybe you haven't gotten a text by mistake. Maybe you just have a feeling. A phone that's migrated off the counter. a savings account you're not sure about, a distance you keep explaining away. And I'm not here to tell you your marriage is what mine turned out to be. Most of the time, it isn't. But I spent years not looking because looking felt like betrayal. And I want to tell you, looking is not betrayal. Protecting yourself is not betrayal. You can love someone and still make sure you're not being erased. I wish I'd understood that 10 years sooner. Here's what Denise told me. She said, "Mark, the best revenge here isn't cruelty." She went low with that "never loved you" line, and you could go low back. Don't. The best thing you can do, for you, for your kids, for the rest of your life, is to be completely, boringly, unshakably fair and calm and correct. Let the documents do the talking. Never let her make you the villain, because the second you blow up, that's the story she gets to tell. She tapped the folder. The truth is already on your side. Don't hand her away to change the subject. So that became the plan. Not vengeance. Precision. We would file first, cleanly, with everything documented, and I would remain, throughout, the calmest man in every room. And then, 4 days before we filed, Derek texted the wrong number again. This one came on a Sunday afternoon. Same unknown number. I was in the driveway changing my truck's oil, and my phone buzzed in my pocket, and it was him again, still not knowing, still thinking he was texting Laura. It said, "Hey, did you talk to the lawyer about the house yet? We need him off the deed before he figures out what it's worth with the new development going in. Don't let him get his own lawyer. Keep it friendly. That's the whole plan. Love you." Almost there. I stood there in my driveway with an oil-stained rag in one hand and my phone in the other, and I actually laughed. Out loud. Alone in my driveway. Because the sheer, staggering arrogance of it. Don't let him get his own lawyer. While I was 4 days from filing with a lawyer who had a folder 2 inches thick. They thought I was still asleep. They thought the "never loved you" had worked. That I was the same defeated man from that first Sunday, shuffling toward a quiet exit. They had no idea that the wrong number text 3 weeks earlier had woken me all the way up. And there was new information in it, too. The new development going in. I did some digging that afternoon, and it turned out there was a planned commercial development near our neighborhood that was quietly expected to push property values up significantly. Our little 3-bedroom ranch, the one I'd been about to walk away from out of grief and decency, was worth considerably more than either of us had paid for it, and about to be worth more still. That's what Keep It Friendly was really about. That's what "Never Loved You" had really been protecting. Not her heart. The equity. I want to let that land, because it's the coldest part of the whole thing. When Laura sat across from me at that table and told me the last 15 years had been a mistake she'd settled for, she was not, in that moment, feeling anything about our marriage at all. She was executing step one of a real estate strategy. The most devastating sentence anyone had ever said to me was, to her, a line item. I'd spent 3 days letting it dismantle my entire understanding of my own life, and it had been, functionally, a move to get my name off a deed before a zoning change went public. There's a specific loneliness in learning that your deepest wound was somebody else's spreadsheet. I screenshotted it, emailed it to myself, backed it up, sent it to Denise with a one-line message. He did it again. She called me 20 minutes later, and I could hear something like delight in her voice, the professional satisfaction of someone watching a case become airtight. She said, "Mark, this second one establishes intent. This isn't just an affair anymore. This is two people coordinating to defraud you of marital assets, and one of them keeps putting it in writing to your phone." She paused. "I've been doing this 26 years. This almost never happens. Usually we're guessing. You've got them documenting their own plan, twice." We moved the filing up. And this time, when I looked at Laura across the dinner table that night, passing the potatoes to Chloe, asking Ben about his science project, playing the patient wife waiting for her sad husband to finally leave, I didn't feel grief. I felt something quieter and stranger. I felt like a man watching the last few minutes of a movie he already knows the ending of. She thought she was 4 days from being free of me. She had no idea that in 4 days, she was going to find out exactly who she'd married. We filed on a Thursday. I won't walk you through every legal detail because divorce paperwork is boring even when it's explosive, but I'll tell you what mattered. Because I had documented everything, because I'd never tipped my hand, because I had two written texts from Derek laying out the whole strategy in his own words, Laura's plan collapsed on contact with reality. The secret account was disclosed and became part of the marital estate. Money she'd hidden was money that got split, which is not how she'd drawn it up. The house did not get quietly signed away by a grieving man. It got properly valued, new development and all, and factored fairly into the settlement. And the narrative she'd built, the cold, betrayed nothing story where she'd simply outgrown a loveless marriage, did not survive the existence of a 2-year affair and a documented financial scheme. She found out I knew when she was served. That's how she found out. Not from a screaming fight, not from me throwing the text in her face, but from a process server and a stack of paperwork that made it very clear the man she'd written off had been 3 moves ahead the whole time. I was not there to see her face. I've thought about that a lot, whether I wanted to be, whether I wished I'd delivered some devastating final speech of my own. I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't. Because the most powerful thing I did in this entire story was never raise my voice. She'd told me I meant nothing to her, and instead of proving her right by falling apart or blowing up, I proved something else entirely. That I was a man worth exactly what he'd always quietly been worth, and that she'd made the mistake of her life underestimating the person she'd decided to discard. Derek, for what it's worth, faded fast once things got real. The relationship that had been so confident in those texts, "We're good, almost there, love you," did not survive contact with an actual, contested, documented divorce. It's easy to be someone's partner in a plan when the plan is going smoothly and the other man is asleep. It's a lot less romantic when there's a lawyer, a valuation dispute, and your own careless texts entered as exhibits. I don't know if they're still together. I genuinely don't care, and I mean that not as a wound, but as a fact. A man who helps a woman plan to defraud her husband, and does it so carelessly he texts the husband twice, is not a man whose life I need to track. If anything, I owe him. His thumbs, twice, gave me my life back. I hope he never learns to double-check a number. Somewhere out there, another man might need the favor. Laura and I are divorced now. It took about 8 months. We share custody of Ben and Chloe, close to 50-50. And here is the thing that surprised me most. We co-parent well. Not warmly, but well. Because I kept my promise. I never made the kids carry it. I never told them what she'd said or what Derek wrote. And that restraint, it turned out, bought me the one thing that mattered more than the house or the money. It bought my kids a dad they could respect and a life that still had a floor. Laura knows what I did and didn't do. I think, in some way she'll never say out loud. She knows I protected our children from the full truth of her. That's a strange kind of power to hold over someone. I try to hold it gently. If any part of this is landing somewhere real for you, stay with me one more minute. The last part is the part one actually need you to hear. I want to go back to that Sunday night. The kitchen table. I never loved you. For a long time, even after everything, those words still had teeth. Because a text can prove a plan, but it can't quite unsay a sentence like that. Part of me kept wondering if it was true after all, if the strategy was real, but so was the sentiment, if she'd just found a useful way to say a thing she also meant. Here's where I landed, and it's the only place worth landing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether she never loved me, or loved me once and stopped, or loved me the whole time and chose money and Derek anyway. Because I know what I did for 15 years. I know I showed up. I know I meant my vows when I said them and every ordinary day after. I know I loved her and my kids, honestly and fully, and without a hidden account or a backup plan or a coached cruel speech. Her love was hers to account for. Mine was real, and no sentence she delivered at a table could reach back and make it fake. That was the lie inside, never loved you. That her feelings got to define whether my 15 years were real. They don't. Only I get to say what my love was worth. And it was worth everything I put into it. Here's what I know now that I didn't know on that couch at 11:40 on a Wednesday. When someone tells you that you meant nothing to them, the wound isn't really the sentence. The wound is that some part of you is ready to believe it. I was ready to believe it. I'd have signed the papers and walked out and spent years thinking I'd been a fool who imagined a whole marriage. A wrong number text is what saved me from that. But you shouldn't need a wrong number text. You should know, going in, that your love was real because you were the one who lived it, and no one else gets a vote on that. I'm okay now. Better than okay. I've got a small place with a bedroom for each kid and a garage I actually use for working on things instead of sitting in the dark. Ben pitches now. I still coach. Chloe stopped needing the water glass excuse a while back, which told me the floor felt solid again. I'm not seeing anyone yet, and I'm in no hurry, because I've learned that being chosen matters a lot less than being real, and I'd rather be alone and real than chosen and asleep. If this story meant something to you, share it with 5 people who might need it. And leave me a comment. Tell me honestly, would you have woken her up that night? Or would you have done what I did and gone quiet and gotten smart? I read every one. Tell me what you want us to talk about next. We're here every day, telling the true ones.